The road was nearly deserted on that cold morning. The wind blew hard, stirring up dust and making the old military coat flap against the frail body of a man who seemed to carry the weight of a century on his back. With each step, the sound of his cane hitting the asphalt echoed like a clock ticking away in solitude. He stretched out his arm, trying to hail a car coming in the distance. The headlights approached, their glow reflecting off the old medals hanging from his chest, signs of a glorious past the world had forgotten. But the car didn't stop. The driver glanced quickly and seeing an elderly man covered in dust and in worn clothes, simply accelerated. Worse than the indifference was the look of contempt he cast out the window before disappearing around the bend. The old veteran slowly lowered his arm. He sighed deeply. Not because of the ride he'd been denied, but because of the memory of how many times he'd been left behind. In war, in life, in history itself. He fought for an entire country. But that day, no one fought for him. The wind picks up. Dry leaves cross the road, and the veteran keeps walking, even with trembling knees. The sun begins to rise, and the reflection illuminates his tired face. His expression is dignified, and a silence that screams louder than any words. In the background, the sound of an engine. Another car approaches. The veteran raises his hand again, but this time the vehicle slows down, hesitates for a moment, and also passes right by. We live in a time where people are too quick to remember who gave them the right to move forward. He adjusts his military cap, as if still maintaining discipline even in abandonment, and he keeps walking with firm steps. The asphalt seems endless, the horizon distant, and the loneliness overwhelming. But the veteran doesn't give up, because there's something he never learned, to give up. And it is at that exact moment that the sound of several engines begins to echo in the background, a powerful metallic roar coming from around the bend. The wind changes, the birds take flight, and the veteran stops, confused. He looks back, and what happens next will silence the world. Some people refuse help. Before becoming just the old man on the road, he was known as Sergeant Augusto Ribeiro, a respected name among his fellow soldiers. A man of honor, courage, and a simple heart. He served for years in the armed forces, crossing borders, storms, and memories that would never leave his mind. In old photos he smiled, a smile that blended youth and pride. Back then, the country was different, and he believed that fighting meant changing the world. But time, cruel and silent, does not forgive even the bravest. After the war ended, Augusto returned home, but there was no home left. His wife had left, tired of waiting. His friends went on with their lives, and the government, the very one he swore to protect, forgot him. All that remained were his medals, kept in an old wooden box, each one telling a story no one wanted to hear anymore. During the day he worked odd jobs, mending fences, cleaning yards, helping neighbors. At night he sat on the porch of a simple rented room, staring into space, listening to the distant sound of passing cars. Perhaps remembering the days when he drove convoys in war zones, delivering life-saving supplies. But on this particular day, he had a reason to be on that road. It was the birthday of the son of a battalion comrade, a boy he'd promised to visit ever since his father, his best friend, went on a mission and never returned. The veteran had set aside a small gift. A miniature military truck, handcrafted and carved from wood. He walked for miles with the toy in his pocket, wrapped in an old cloth as if it were a treasure. The problem was, the bus he was supposed to take never came. Without money for another, he decided to walk. And that's how he ended up on that long road, trying to get a ride that seemed like it would never come. Augusto smiles as if accustomed to the contempt. But inside, the silence weighs heavily. He adjusts his military cap, looks at the horizon and murmurs softly, "One more step, Ribeiro, just one more step." He didn't know it, but every step on that road brought him closer to a reunion the whole world needed to see. The road seemed endless. The sun was already blazing, and the heat made the air vibrate over the cracked asphalt. The veteran stopped at the side of the road, leaned on his cane and waved his arm, trying to flag down another approaching car. But like the others, the driver looked away. He drove right past. The wind blew the dust from the roadside, covering the worn uniform the old man still wore. The same one that had once represented honor, duty, and sacrifice. He took a deep breath, trying to hide his disappointment. At that moment, a white pickup truck appeared on the horizon. The veteran gave one last wave. A pickup truck speeding along. For a moment it seemed someone would finally stop. But no. The driver looked at him with contempt and looked out the window. "Get off the road, old man. This is no place for a beggar." The veteran slowly lowered his arm. I didn't respond. His gaze grew distant, as if he had learned that silence is more dignified than an answer. The same man who once defended strangers on the battlefield has now been rejected by those he swore to protect. The sound of tires faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of the wind hitting the metals pinned to his chest. He took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and murmured, "It's okay. A soldier never gives up." But that's when fate decided to act. In the distance, a deep rumble began to fill the air. At first it seemed distant, almost imperceptible, then louder, longer. The ground began to tremble slightly. The veteran looked back, his eyes squinting against the sun, and saw something that made his heart race. A string of military vehicles approached. These weren't ordinary cars. They were army trucks, followed by official vehicles and escorting motorcycles. The roar of their engines echoed like a roar of honor on that forgotten road. The old man adjusted his military cap and stood firm, erect, a posture his body could barely bear, but which his enduring soul maintained. He placed his right hand on his forehead in a gesture of salute. The first truck sped along. The second one did too. And within seconds, the entire fleet stopped. The soldiers were getting out of the vehicles. Some looked confused, others already knew who it was. One of them, the youngest, moved slowly, his eyes welling up. "Sir, are you Sergeant Augusto Ribeiro?" "I am, young man, or what's left of him," he replied with a tired smile. Silence filled the room. The young soldier stepped forward, saluted, and said in a firm voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, stand at attention." All the soldiers present, more than 30 men, lined up before the old veteran. Dust rose around them, the sun reflected off their uniforms, and the sound of synchronized boots pounded the air. That same man whom society had forgotten was now recognized by the sons of the nation he helped protect. The driver of the white pickup truck, who had stopped ahead out of curiosity, watched from afar, and his face paled. He could hardly believe he hadn't seen it. The young soldier moved again and took something out of his pocket. It was an old photo, taken decades earlier at a military base. In it, Sergeant Augusto smiled with the same firm gaze next to a group of young recruits. One of them was the soldier's father, who now revered him. The boy swallowed hard, and with a trembling voice said, "You saved my father, sir. He told me the story before he died. He said that if I ever met Sergeant Ribeiro, I was to never let him walk alone." Tears streamed down the old veteran's face. He tried to hide them, but couldn't. The emotion was overwhelming. Sometimes recognition doesn't come when we want it, but when fate decides it's time to honor the forgotten. And at that moment, the unexpected happened. The soldiers formed an impromptu honor guard. The youngest took the veteran's arm and said, "You won't be walking alone anymore, Sergeant. The train is yours now." The road was now filled with the sound of idling engines and a reverent silence. The veteran, still motionless, stared at the soldiers in front of him with teary eyes. The wind swayed the flag attached to the antenna of one of the trucks, and the sun reflected off their uniforms as if time itself had stopped to observe. But not everyone was silent. In the background, parked a few meters away, the driver of the white pickup truck was getting out of his car. The same man who, minutes earlier, had shouted, "Old beggar," now approached with slow steps, visibly embarrassed. The dust on the road seemed heavier with each step he took. There are times when shame weighs more heavily than regret, and that man was about to feel the weight of every word spoken. The driver took a deep breath, looked at the group of soldiers, and tried to force a shy smile. I didn't know who he was." The young soldier, the same one who had recognized the veteran, slowly turned his face, staring at him firmly. "And if you knew, would you treat him differently?" The silence that followed was deafening. The man stammered, tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't come. He looked away, embarrassed. Meanwhile, the veteran watched everything, not with anger nor resentment. His expression was serene, a kind of calm only those who have faced death can achieve. He approached, leaning on his cane, and placed his hand on the driver's shoulder. "Son, you don't need to know who someone is to respect them." His voice was low, but each word sounded like an eternal echo. Because true character shows when no one is looking. The driver lowered his head, and a single tear fell to the dirt floor. He didn't know what to say. He tried to apologize, but the veteran only gave a weak smile and added, "It's okay. I was young once, and I made mistakes too. Just don't forget what you learned here today." At that moment, the young soldier approached with a symbolic gesture. He took a small folded flag from his pocket and handed it to the veteran. "Sir, the American Army thanks you for not forgetting who we are. And we promise the country won't forget you either." The tears finally escaped the old man's eyes. He didn't need medals. He didn't need applause. In that moment, respect was his uniform again. One of the trucks turned on the military radio. The song, "The Star-Spangled Banner," a traditional armed forces song, began to play softly. The soldiers saluted once more. The veteran, with effort, returned the gesture. The scene was powerful. The sound of the music mingled with the wind and the suppressed sobs of those watching. The driver, still kneeling, wiped away his tears and realized, perhaps for the first time, what honor truly meant. And then something unexpected happened. One of the soldiers took out his cell phone and began discreetly filming the moment. The video showed the veteran being saluted by the troops, with the remorseful driver at his side. Hours later, the video would spread across the internet, and millions of people would watch, moved, that scene of redemption. The comments would multiply. "There are still heroes among us. This made me cry. Respect can't be bought, it's earned." And symbolically, the veteran would once again inspire the country. Not on a battlefield, but on a simple, forgotten country road. Maybe he never received the glory he deserved, but on that day, every salute, every tear, and every look of respect were worth more than any medal. The veteran then looked to the horizon and, with a slight smile, murmured, "Mission accomplished." The entire convoy, as if in response, turned on their sirens for a few seconds, a spontaneous tribute, a hymn of respect that echoed for miles. As the convoy stood still and the sound of sirens faded in the distance, a respectful silence filled the air. The veteran stood there, firm, still trying to hold back the tears that insisted on escaping. The soldiers, motionless, watched him with a mixture of admiration and reverence. But no one there imagined the true weight of the story this man carried. One of the soldiers, curious, approached with a hesitant look. He held a tablet in his hands. He had typed the name, Sergeant Augusto Ribeiro, into the army search. When the screen loaded, the silence became even deeper. The words shone in the sunlight. War hero, decorated for bravery during the peacekeeping mission in the East. Saved 47 lives in an insurgent attack. The young soldier swallowed hard. He read aloud, and each sentence felt like a blow to the chest of everyone present. Wounded in combat. Refused evacuation to save his comrades. Received the Medal of Honor and a permanent disability discharge. The driver kneeling beside him put his hands to his head. He could hardly believe it. The man he had called a useless old man was, in fact, a national hero, someone who had given his all for his country. And it was there, on that forgotten road, that the world saw the difference between appearance and greatness. Because true valor is not dressed in luxury, nor does it need applause. It is revealed in those who never stopped fighting, even when the world had already given up on them. One of the senior soldiers approached, visibly moved. He took off his cap, placed it on his chest, and said, "Sir, you shouldn't be here alone. You should be being honored." The veteran smiled wearily and replied humbly, "I don't need tributes, son. I just need respect. That's enough." These words struck everyone present like a silent punch. The driver, now in tears, approached again. With a choked voice, he said, "I didn't know. Forgive me, please." The veteran looked at him and once again, without hatred, replied, "You learned today what many forget their entire lives. Heroes don't need capes, only humanity." The young soldier holding the tablet showed something else. In the corner of the screen was an old photo. The veteran, still young, carrying a wounded comrade in his arms, his face covered in dust and blood. It was the image of a man who risked everything, including his own life, for someone he didn't even know. The photo was passed around, and within minutes all the soldiers were teary-eyed. The driver also looked at the image, trembling. It was impossible not to feel the weight of shame mixed with admiration. In that moment, everyone present understood that time can take away youth, can steal strength, can erase scars. But it never erases the honor of those who fought for something greater than themselves. The veteran took a deep breath and looked to the horizon. "I only did my duty, nothing more." A reverent silence fell. The young soldier, his eyes brimming with tears, spoke in a trembling voice. "Sir, the country may have forgotten, but we have not." He then turned to the other soldiers and shouted, "Present arms!" And in perfect synchrony, all the soldiers raised their weapons to the sky in a solemn and imposing gesture. Dust rose from the ground, the metallic clang echoed along the road, and for a brief moment it seemed as if even the wind had stopped. He who was rejected on the road was now honored by an entire troop. He who was called useless was now the source of pride for a nation, because true greatness never dies, it only waits to be recognized. The veteran surrounded by soldiers, with the sunset in the background, the flag fluttering gently in the wind. And in a final whisper he repeats softly, the video of the encounter between the veteran and the soldiers spread across the internet like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, it had already surpassed 10 million views. Social media exploded with comments, shares, and emotional messages. The hashtags, Forgotten Hero, Respect Veterans, and Mission Accomplished dominated the trends. In a country where so many forget history, that video reminded us of the value of those who once fought for what is right. A man humiliated in silence became a symbol of respect and courage. Meanwhile, the driver, the same one who had called the veteran an old beggar, watched the backlash with shame on his face. His name leaked online. The white pickup truck was recognized. And in a short time, he became the living portrait of arrogance and a lack of empathy. People left comments on their social media. Now you know what it's like to feel ashamed. Learn to respect those who gave their blood for you. The old man has more honor in his eyes than you have in your entire life. The man locked himself in his house for days, trying to escape the weight of his own conscience. But the image of that veteran standing firm before the soldiers haunted him every night. It wasn't public shame that consumed him anymore. It was guilt. Some lessons aren't taught with words but with examples. And sometimes fate only needs a moment to reverse the roles. The mocker kneels, and the forgotten becomes immortal. While regret gnawed at one, recognition blossomed for the other. The American Army, moved by the video, contacted the veteran. He was invited to an official tribute ceremony in the capital. That day, the dusty road gave way to the red carpet at headquarters. The old sergeant arrived in a simple suit, with the same cane, the same serene look. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, the convoy of soldiers that had stopped on the road marched in perfect formation. The Star-Spangled Banner blared again, this time not from a truck radio, but from the official armed forces band. The commander took the podium, his voice choked with emotion. Today we honor a man who never asked for recognition, a man who taught this country that respect doesn't depend on age, uniform, or status. It depends on character. The audience rose to its feet in applause. Some wept. Others saluted. And in the midst of them all, there he stood, the veteran, trying to hold back tears. With trembling hands, he received a new medal. But more than that, he received something he had long since lost: dignity. He asked for nothing, but the world decided to return everything. Because life, when it wants to do justice, doesn't need courts. A genuine gesture is enough. The driver, watching everything on television, wept silently. He got in the car and drove to the event, even though he wasn't sure if he would be welcomed. He arrived late, just as the ceremony was ending. But fate, once again, brought him face to face with the one he had offended. He approached slowly and, with tears streaming down his face, knelt before the veteran. "Sir, there's no excuse that can erase what I did. But you taught me what it means to be a real man. Thank you." The veteran simply placed his hand on his shoulder and replied, "Get up, son. Heroes fall, but they get up. Today, you learned that too." The crowd applauded, not for the theatrical gesture, but for the message that transcended the moment. Respect is not a privilege, it's a duty. The image of the two, the old hero and the repentant man, made headlines in newspapers and on websites. And that day, the entire country remembered that humility is the greatest act of courage anyone can perform. He who was ignored on the road now walked in the hearts of millions. The forgotten became a symbol. And the veteran, who once asked only for a little respect, ended up receiving something greater: eternity. The final scene shows the veteran leaving the event, walking slowly toward the sunset. The flag flutters behind him,